Voices from the Mausoleum is brought to you by the You Run Podcast Network and yourunpodcast.com.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome to an episode of Horror Games in Real Life, a series where Kat plays scary games so you don't have to.
Yes. I'm back to play some scary games. I actually thought about playing this one on the stream. I'm excited to talk about it. But I won't.
Don't be invoking stuff. This is supposed to be about like you doing stuff, not involving.
This turns into a host. Like I summon a ghost here at my house that gets into the internet, and this is the last episode of the show, guys.
Hey, it's gonna be pre-recorded, Steve. If you see this and Kat and I are both dead, use it. Make a movie out of it.
Yeah. Turn it into the next like Rings situation where
yeah. Or what was that game, it's like a found footagey style. It's called like Deadware or something, where they like go in to play this game. And anyway, yeah, there's a few examples of that, but yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so if you haven't seen any of the other episodes, there's a playlist. We had some really crazy. The last one was the craziest so far, I think, as far as events and things that happened. And then there's some common ones talked about. Bloody Mary and the elevator game is another one that I feel like is pretty big. But yeah, so which one we're talking about today?
Talking about Tomino's Hell. So, and this is, I figure, because Tomino's Hell is not that long of a thing, but I figured we could talk about it's my favorite example of kind of a larger trend in ghost games and internet games, which is funny because this one actually didn't start as a like creepypasta, or a lot of these can be traced back to like chain letters or creepypastas or media inspired by those two things. And this one can't, which I think might be like, that makes it feel more authentic. I think that might be why it is my favorite. But I wanted to talk about the genre as a whole, the like, if you do this, consequences genre of and we talked about it with some of like the other ghost games. Anyone that knows me, anyone that's seen an episode of the show knows that for me, the reward is seeing the ghost. Like that was my motivation for a long time. Kat wanted to see a ghost, and it led me down this rabbit hole of but like with 11 miles, for example, there was also an incentive where it was like, if you do this successfully, there's a reward. If you fail, you know, you go to hell. Essentially, you get trapped in a hellscape. And I was like, yeah, but do I get to see the ghost?
Like that's really why I'm here.
So that was like, but I think that does kind of overlook the entire like range of games and ritual pastas and stuff, where it really is just like a cautionary, don't do this. Nothing good can come from it. You already know too much. Like, and that's something that also, you know, that's always I talk about it in horror movies and stuff too, where it's like the really obvious answer is just to not do the thing. But there are some of us, and I get into this fight with my co-host over on Slasher Radio, Rob Humphrey, because he is wired the opposite way from me. So like we'll be watching a movie, we'll be watching, you know, like Evil Dead, and he'll be like, just don't read from the book. Just don't say the Latin. Why would I ever say Latin ever? And in my brain, it's like, I read, like I took a Latin class, so I can read more shit in Latin out loud. Like I've got to know what happens when I read the book. And he's just like, just don't do it. And like and we go through it, you know, with like Candyman and I think the big one is actually Hellraiser. If I saw a puzzle box, I'd have to know what it, you know, that's just how I am. And I think like this whole genre of don't do the thing is really scary for people who are pre-wired to do the thing. Like it just resonates with me in a way that's like, this would get me, I would die, you know.
Don't you think it's interesting too though that a lot of these things that are like don't do this, it's like don't do this, but let me show you how to do it if you're going to do it. And then there's like, you know what I mean? It's like don't do it, but you know it's like here's the steps 1 through 30 or whatever. Like
Here's a step by step.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think it's really interesting, because I've been playing these games long enough now that I'm starting to see, like, new iterations of them come up. We talked about it with the elevator game where
Oh,
I played
yeah.
with a different sequence of buttons than the one
Yes.
that's going around now, and on the one hand, it's like, I'm aware that the internet just accelerates the growth and mutation of stories, but there is that part of my brain that's like, are people wising up and getting rid of the actual rules so that, like, we can't
Things won't happen.
successfully anymore, you know?
Yeah, that's one I would definitely never do.
And it's one I think is it our next it's not our next episode. We have one coming up, where it's like I also played with a wildly different set of rules and I had to like make a note for myself. It's like do not reveal real rules of this game.
Oh, okay. Oh, meaning one we haven't talked about yet. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
We've
yeah.
got one coming up where like the rules that are circulating now are not the rules that I played with, and it's like I'm not sure I need to be advertising how to do this. Like
Yeah.
if that's
Well,
not the version that
yeah, and I think like I think I would probably feel the same way. It'd be like it's different for a reason or like I like okay, so like when we start getting into like beliefs and like things that like I believe as an individual when it comes to like ghosts and things like that. I believe like while I'm not religious, I don't believe in like God or the devil or any of that stuff. But what I do believe in is balance. And I think that there are things in other ways of existence that like human beings are not meant to know. And so
yeah.
kind of like in the movie White Noise, it's like there are things I feel this is I don't know for sure that this exists, but it makes logical sense to me that there are things that will prevent us from getting to that point where we know too much because they're like
Yeah.
guardians of this knowledge base. And so it makes me think about it too in the sense of like who changed it? Why is it all of a
Yeah.
sudden different? Because it's like maybe we were getting too close and the beings that were like, no, we got to change this shit up. Like, this is too much. Or they probably just hate us and they really just don't want us around. And so they're like, we got to figure out a way to get the humans to stop fucking showing up here. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
but I always
There's
think
the
about it in
barrier.
terms of like, well, who decided to change it so that maybe we couldn't get there? Like, that's kind of like, when you said that, that was like immediately where my brain went.
Yeah. And it's one of those things we have a human explanation for it, but there's enough
Yeah,
doubt in my mind where it's like, is someone making it harder to play ghost games
sure.
intentionally?
Sure.
Should I be one of those people
Right.
also? Should that be the side that I'm fighting for? But yeah,
Yeah.
it is kind of a large it it's almost I would call it a trope, like, just don't
Mhm.
do this trope.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and we're gonna be talking about that today. A lot of them, like I said, I listed some movie examples, but there are also a lot of creepypastas. There are like a lot of
Mhm.
games, I feel like video games that kind of center around this just don't do the thing. In games, I feel like it's usually someone already did the thing.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
whereas in movies, it's more like, look at these idiots.
We're watching them do the thing. Yes.
Yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. It really is like that. Yeah.
And in creepypastas, we've gotten to see like the whole range of them, I think,
Mhm.
where it's like
Yeah.
my and actually in creepypasta specifically, little bit off topic, little bit of a side tangent. My
Mhm.
favorite trope is actually I tricked you into doing the thing already. Like that those work really well for me. Smile Dog is like
Yeah.
my favorite OG creepypasta because it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
if it knows that you know about it, it could come after you. And guess what? You're now in that pool of
It's
people, so
too
it's
yeah,
not
and
gonna
at
get
that
me.
point it's yeah. Yeah, no, I think that it's a reveal that when it's written well enough or it's executed well enough, it really is an effective like, "Oh shit" moment because you're like, "Oh no." Because like
Yeah,
you didn't mean to, so you're not an idiot, but
yeah.
also you got tricked, so it's like, yeah.
But now you're involved in the thing. And that one also
Yeah.
there's a lot of catharsis in that as the
Mhm.
like classic dumb movie person that would do the thing. It's
Mhm.
like stories like that are really nice for me because it's like now we all have the experience of what it's like to be me
like,
all the time.
Yeah, you're like, see? Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, I really like those kinds of like information hazard stories that kind of rely off of this. Rocco's Basilisk being the like the big once you know it's already too late, kind of
Yeah.
I love that as like a storytelling device. But
Yeah, it's a good one.
one thing about them about like the fictional creepy you can't say fictional creepypastas because that's like redundant, but
But
but uh the thing about creepypastas that are like more marketed specifically as fiction where it's like have a higher suspension of disbelief, get into the story. We're not going to circulate this like a step of because creepypasta started pretty much all in this genre where it was like either I'm going
yeah,
to trick you into doing something or I'm going to tell you what not to do. And it was one of those two
yes.
things.
Yeah.
And they were circulated like in emails and stuff. And that's where the term creepypasta comes from. It's a joke based off of copy pasta, which was those emails that were going around and being spread on
Yep.
forums and stuff.
Yeah.
So I like this was the genre when it started, but when it got more into like Reddit No Sleep also has that thing where it's you assume it to be real to like an
Yeah.
almost role-playing degree. That's like in the
Yeah.
forum rules where you're not allowed to like demand proof or ask for like it's just they have a high suspension of disbelief thing. I think it keeps a lot of the horror intact. Um
Yeah.
in I rough estimate here, maybe like 2015-ish, I noticed a trend starting where it was like there were those things, there were those elements that
Yeah.
were like we have this where we're all going to play along to just like make it spookier, but then there was also like a, a route that was like I'm going to not tell you the rules of this game so that you can't do it and you just have to appreciate the story. And it was like I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
It's not I feel like it didn't last long because a lot of the creepypastas that implemented it tended to be the creepypastas that were like maybe not the best written. But I thought it was a
Um,
really interesting trend. Like even though we
yeah.
don't have a lot of ones that have like survived that point in time.
Mhm.
It was something that I thought was really interesting to see, as opposed to the more standard, just like, here are the rules, play at your own risk, and then you play it and then nothing happens and you're like, oh, that was it, it's done now.
Yeah, I mean, I think to be fair, it's we all say like, "Oh, like we would never do that." But I think there are that's probably true for a lot of people, like as far as the I would nevers. But I think the other thing is true is I think curiosity is it's a very human thing. And I think sometimes like at least for me, like I did like my very first ghost hunt like 2 years ago. And I really did not expect me to be as brave as I was. Like I really thought I was going to be like I'm not doing shit alone. You're crazy. But I did a lot more in the moment out of curiosity than I would have ever thought I would do before I was put in that situation. And I think some of that
Yeah.
stuff is like like we always catch there's always the joke of oh there's a noise and then it's like we have to go look. It's like but you don't. It's like but you do because
You
if it
do.
is something dangerous, right? It doesn't benefit you to pretend that it's not. It's more beneficial to go look and see if it's something you can defend yourself against, like and so I
Yeah.
think it's as implausible as it seems for people to want to do these things just out of curiosity. I think that's actually very realistic.
Yeah, because you
Yeah.
just like you want to know. There's something in us
Yes.
that just
That's
needs
normal.
to know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
by
I
the way,
totally.
you said curiosity. We should have called the show Curiosity Killed the Cat. And then I
Oh,
just
that
should have
was the
faked my
other
death at the end.
that was the other logo idea.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Oh my god. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm one of those people, like I've got to know about stuff. And this
Yeah.
genre, I think in a way, the the reward aspect I think is good for like the layman person, because it's like if you succeed in doing this thing, you get like unimaginable rewards. And I think a lot of people are kind of drawn into that incentive. I think the do not do this under any circumstances actually appeals to that like curious part of my brain more, because it's like, well, someone must have done it, like somebody
or
must
like
have.
if you're like a skeptic and you're approaching it from like this is bullshit, it's like I can prove this wrong, it's no problem. Like there's a sense of like arrogance to the other side of that too, is like if like, so you're like, you know, I mean, how many times have we seen that approach? Like right. And then he goes off and gets killed every time. And it's like, see, maybe cool your jets next time. Like, you know,
maybe you don't know everything.
No, so I think it's not as I don't think it's as dumb as people paint it out to be when it comes to doing stuff like this. And then you've got people, you know, obviously like with the rise of the technology and the social media and all of that, you know, the point in doing scary things, the motivation has changed a bit, because now you can do it and get like a lot of, you know, interaction, or you can get a lot of eyes on it. And then people want to see more. And it's all like, it's got like kind of convoluted in that way. But I think at the core, it's like curious.
And I know I'm going to get a big eye roll here from you in a minute, and I promise I won't talk about it too much, but that was my favorite aspect of Deadstream, was just the like, I have to stay for the views. I'll lose my sponsors if I'm not in the haunted house. And you're like,
no, the content creator aspect of that is super realistic. I mean, even the beginning, I keep forgetting my cat's laying on my blanket. I'm sorry. Even like the, you know, the part about like saying, like doing something shitty and then having to like apologize and then trying to like get like all of that is like super realistic. I mean, you got like that idiot guy, what is his name? Jake Paul or whatever. Like went to Suicide Forest and like record and like, bro, like, I don't know how something hadn't gotten you yet. Like, I'm telling you, like it was so disrespectful. For starters, but it was so like, but it just like, people will just like there are people who will do anything for views and for content, and they don't care about what it does for them as a person, as a spiritual being, whatever. Like they don't care, because they're still willing to do it because they want the likes and the hearts and the comments and the whatever. But I remember when that story came out, this has been a long time ago now. This is before he became a fighter or whatever he is now. But when he was still doing YouTube and still living in that weird house with a bunch of guys, he like did that. And I remember when it came out being like, you have got to be kidding me right now. Like, who would think that doing that? But it's not far-fetched. People do stupid shit like that all the time for video views.
And I think I could be wrong here. I think it was actually the brother that did that, because and kind of to illustrate your point is like, he had to do like the apology tour, and you know, he got a lot of likes and content and views for apologizing for showing the dead body. And then, but I still to this day, it's like Jake Paul's the like box scammer, and Logan Paul's the one who went to Aokigahara. Like,
oh, Logan. That's Logan. It. I'm sorry. Yes. You're right. Yes, you're right.
But that's like the thing that I remember him for now. So it worked is the frustrating thing, because it's like, I'm still using that video.
That's exactly my point. If he had lost, if he got no attention, if he had lost all of his followers, everybody said, fuck you. Then, you know, like if that was the reaction to things like that, people wouldn't do them. But like my dad, he gets so heated talking about this. He, first of all, hates social media, but he really gets heated when he talks about the people that do that sucker punching stuff, where they like just walk around and find people and hit them.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. You better knock me out. I'm telling you right now. Like I may not be fast, but I'm motivated. Like if you know, like but people don't care. They don't care. Like they'll just do these things. So people say all the time that people who do these things are dumb, or like it doesn't make any sense, but it does. Like it does. It's actually a lot more realistic than I think a lot of people want to acknowledge.
And it's getting more realistic because of the way that like the internet has warped our perception of reality.
So true. Yes, very much so. Yeah.
But I
No,
will and like it has kind of there are now a bunch of like creepypastas and viral stunts and stuff that I don't think could work today because I'm not going to talk about it too much because it's in an upcoming episode. But actually I'll use a different example. I'll talk about do you remember Motel 666?
Yeah.
That's something that wouldn't work today because
No.
it would be viral. Everyone would know about it before you had the chance to play it. It would be like the servers would crash. Like it just I
No,
do
that's a
kind
good
of miss
example. Yeah. Yeah.
I miss that internet
Yeah.
era where we could have these kind of
Yeah.
like private scary moments, you know, and um
Yeah.
but we don't have those so much anymore, but we do have the memory of when we had those and when we got to play those games.
That's true.
And Tomino's Hell actually is a little bit outside of that box because it was not a creepypasta. It just got sucked into this whole trend because it was a spooky poem with a spooky image that went along with it, and everyone
Oh,
was like, "Perfect creepypasta content right here."
sure.
Um,
Yeah. I
it
mean, that's the equation, right? Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
actually if I had been prepared, I would have um downloaded an image to send to you.
Well, if you have it, you can send it to me on Instagram. I'll throw it up real quick while you're
Just so
talking.
you have it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got like a creepy it is accompanied by an illustration, and it was originally published in a book of Japanese poetry by let me see. I'm
I've
gonna
seen
butcher
this
this name.
before.
Yeah. It got circulated around a lot.
I've seen
uh
this before. Yeah. Is it part of a bigger image or
yes, it is.
okay. Okay.
This is the one that gets circulated in conjunction to the creepypasta, but it's part of a larger print. This was
Oh.
a fully illustrated collection of poetry from Saijo Yaso,
Mhm.
who is I not like I don't know how famous the different like scales of Japanese poets are, but like a well-respected poet. Like this is his 20 do I have an answer for the 27th collection of poems
Okay. So this is
called
the image, which is anyway. I labeled it as creepy because it is. It's creepy.
it
But
is
anyway,
creepy.
continue.
uh so this is it's from his 27th collection of poems called Gold Dust. And I'm not even gonna mess around with the I'm not even gonna mess around with the Japanese here, because my
Okay.
Japanese is shaky at best. But Gold Dust in English, and it has uh it's become kind of circulated where this accompanies the poem called Tomino's Hell, which is a horror poem describing a young boy named Tomino and his experience in hell where he goes because of his sister. And the idea is that
Mhm.
if you read it out loud,
Mhm.
you will also go to hell. Bad things will happen to you and you will be punished for your sins. Um which
Jeez, just from reading it?
just from reading it out loud. You can read it quietly and it's fine. You can also if you want to like time travel back to when this first got really popular on the internet, you can also listen to the creepypasta YouTuber of your choice read it out loud to you. And they all turned out mostly fine. It's fine. But
Mostly.
mostly. Some of them did fall off the map and then you always wonder like did Tomino get them? I just thought this was really interesting. I didn't realize I didn't have this in my notes for the episode, but when I went to snag the picture for you,
Yeah.
they actually also have examples of like the they also have examples of myths that were circulating in Japan that this is not like. It specifies this is more similar to a curse and should not be compared with the common myths like you'll grow taller or my parents died. Which just like that's a whole wide range of oh boy, that's a lot to unpack. I guess it's the same kind of thing we were talking about at the beginning of the episode where it's like there's an incentive where if you do this thing, you'll get a reward, growing taller, or a bad thing will happen. My parents died. That's such a specific
yes, two very
combination of
specific.
myths.
Yeah.
And then so yeah, this got circulated. The poem was translated and spread around with this excerpt from the original print. It was a big thing for a while to like post this on a burner account, saying that you would read it out loud and then just kind of vanish off the face of the internet. There are a lot of dead threads like that, which I think is one of those fun kind of like internet, like ghost town funny situations. But yeah, another version of this was that like someone else close to you, because it started as like you'll be taken to hell, we'll know that you died. People got a little bit wiser eventually, and it kind of mutated into someone close to you will get sick and pass away, which I think is where like the smart people stopped playing this. But I have read this poem out loud. I was fine. Everyone around me was fine. There is an interesting note here also that it would be better to read, which I didn't know, because this was not a thing when I played it. They're saying that it's actually more dangerous to read it in English out loud than it is. If you have to read it out loud, it suggests you do it in Japanese, which
interesting.
Is an interesting note that I was not forewarned of before I read it very much in English.
So you did the most dangerous.
So I did the most dangerous. I figured that was going to go the other way. I figured like the English translation was like a step further from the accurate
like
text.
Less powerful or something.
Yeah. But no, apparently maybe Tomino's just mad that we're bad at translating Japanese. Now we know. But yeah, it's if anyone I've talked myself out, I think, unless you have a different opinion. I've talked myself out of reading it out loud in English on the podcast, but you can look this up. It's everywhere if you would like to read the story. It's a very a lot of the nuance and like poetic devices that are present in the Japanese version obviously are not present if you read it in English.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting story. It's well written. It's a very interesting depiction of hell. I highly recommend reading it. And if, not that I would encourage you to like summon ghosts or hell upon yourself, but like if you wanted to read it in English out loud, I could not stop you. I'm totally fine, guys.
Nothing happened, right?
Nothing happened. But we are entering the we are kind of entering the era of ghost games now, like in the series, and I think pretty much moving forward from here, where there aren't incentives. Like you summon a ghost and you deal with those consequences. Like you read the poem, you maybe go to hell, and that's just kind of where we're at. We're out of ones where it's like there's bribery involved.
Something positive, yeah. Yeah, I think the one that was the most like that was the 11 miles, where it had like the promise of like something you really wanted to obtain. And and then, or like even the other ones, like the other what was the other coin one? Not the one we just did, but the one you did in the
Sarah
Sarita, where it was like there was still like a safe out.
Yes.
Like there's some of the ones that we've covered, I think all the ones we've covered so far have at least had an option to opt out at some point, or a way to get out of it without being haunted, killed, drugged to hell, so we're leaving that territory and going into you get what you get, you did this. So
and we talked about it a little bit. I just kind of closing out on those incentive games. There are a couple other ones. There was one that I tried really hard to find, but I don't remember what it was called,
Yeah.
that I played at one point. There was one other incentive one, and I looked for it for a little while, but without remembering what it was called, I gave up pretty quickly, especially because I played it and nothing happened, and it wasn't, like, the spookiest, and I was like, "We can probably skip over that one." But it was kind of like a, "Hey, if you do this, you'll have a better version of your life," where it kind of, like, tries to bribe you into, um doing stuff, but it was really just me drinking a bunch of water at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Not super eventful. But now that we're closing out on that like section of ghost games, it
Mhm.
is kind of interesting to see how many more of these I have played just for the sake of playing them. And I like
It's a good point.
Uh, because that is the majority of them. That was the situation with the Tomino's Hell, where it was just like, this wasn't like something that's just been invented. This is like an actual Japanese book. And once you get aside it might be low key a little bit racist that we assume that it can actually summon demons, um, like just because it was written in a different language. Well, like once you get over that very
Yeah.
westernized, like kind of outrageousness.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that really piques my curiosity because it's like this is a pre-existing thing. Like people know about it. I'm sure people have read it. It just I have to know. I have to know if it works, because then there's the other side too, where it's like if
Mhm.
everyone believes that reading it out loud has this power,
Mhm.
what how many people really have read it and how many of these things can be swept under the rug. And there's just this one, we kind of started with this one edging into this era because nothing super spooky happened to me. I like printed it out, read it out loud in a room, and I had the
Yeah.
spooky is it gonna happen experience, but nothing did. There's not like a bunch of story here, but it does kind of, and we talked about this in the introduction episode too, it enters into that
Mhm.
era of like when you start playing the more dangerous ones, you never really know if they closed. Like, and that's the lingering doubt of Tomino's Help, because it's not like with the rituals and the incentives and stuff, it's like you do this happens, and here's a step by step toward your reward or
Right.
failure.
Sure.
You know when it doesn't succeed. But then there's always
But
that lingering, like, if I disappeared tomorrow, there's always that like, did
yeah.
Tomino get her? Because it's not like a
Yeah,
right
because you don't
away
know.
kind of
That's a good
um
point. Yeah, there's not like because you don't know how long it takes, and you
yeah,
don't know if there's
you
like a
don't.
cap, like, he's gotta get you by like X amount of time or you're safe or you're right, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that way. You're right.
And it's something that kind of like, as someone that already has anxiety, leading into some of the other games, it's one of those like, should I be doing this as often as I do kind of, because you just never really know for sure. And especially with games where you can't close them out, it's like it's one thing to have it's like it is kind of like the difference between being like kidnapped and going to an escape room, where it's like if you go to an escape room, you're going to be real scared while you're there and it's an experience. But like if someone tries to kidnap you and you escape, you're always going to wonder who that person was and if they still want to get you. Like
Yeah, that's
you
a
take
that's a
that home
fun
with you.
that's a crazy comparison, but you're right. No, that's a great comparison. Yeah, I haven't done any of these, so I don't have to have that fear, but yeah, I imagine it's like the open-endedness of it all is very
And that I think, like, even though Tomino's Howl is kind of one of the like sillier, you read this poem out loud and are dragged to hell. It's one of the more over the top kind of,
yeah,
it doesn't keep me up at night
sure.
stories, but it is that open-endedness, I think, that will eventually get you. Like the uncertainty is,
Yeah.
uh because if you believe in this, if you're like a cynic and you're playing these things to kind of prove that they don't exist and then they don't work, I think you probably won't spend that much time thinking about it. But as someone that does believe that there's something weird going on out there, it is that constant like
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think that makes sense. I can and you because you're waiting on it to work. for something to happen. And so you're just like, is it going to happen? Yeah, no, I totally get that. That makes sense.
It's, so yeah, I think that's where some of the real fear comes from, even if not from this specific one. And I'm excited. Our next one that we're going to be talking about is actually, pretty silly, but like for the most part, that is kind of where we're entering that darker era of ghost games. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got these going until the end of the year, I think.
Yeah.
So we've got plenty more to talk about, or plenty more of your stories to share. Yeah, I hadn't heard of this one either. So that was I don't know. I kind of err on the side of caution with things. I'm just like,
I think that's the smarter way to live life.
A little dull sometimes, but probably definitely at least a little bit safer. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, yeah, like I said at the beginning, if you haven't seen the other episodes, there's an entire playlist. We have quite a few more that we're going to cover leading into the end of the year. So, you know, I never say this. I never say, and I don't know why I don't ever say it. I think because I feel like if people are going to do it, they're going to do it. But if you haven't, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell icon, because then you'll know when the new episodes come out. You know, I'm in the process of starting up like 4 new shows, and summer's coming up. So we're getting ready to do more franchise lives, and there's just a lot of stuff going on. So if you want to know about it, that's the best way to do it, is to be subscribed, because then you get notified when we have new videos. So, yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this episode of Horror Games in Real Life. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us again. We hope you have a good rest of the week. Enjoy the weekend, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.